Okay. Aloha, half a day to each of you attending from Hawaii, Guam, or the mainland. I'm Al Ogata. I'm the president and CEO of Cyber Hawaii. Cyber Hawaii is a nonprofit information sharing organization. Let me see if I can get my slides to flip. And we also focus on workforce development. We really look into improving cyber resiliency in Hawaii's small and mid-sized businesses, as well as within the community as a whole. We're supported by the state of Hawaii, University of Hawaii, the private sector businesses that you see here, and through partnerships with numerous agencies in Hawaii. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the first webinar of the 2024 Fortify Cybersecurity Educational Series. This series is brought to you through a partnership between Cyber Hawaii and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, and is supported through a grant from the Hawaii Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism. Today's webinar will discuss password management and multi-factor authentication as critical parts of any security architecture set up to keep your business or family safe from cyber criminals. Our goal today is to give you some practical insights that you can use to implement both password management and MFA. You'll have opportunities to ask questions at various points in today's presentation. Questions should be answered into the chat window and will be read at pauses in the presentation. The presentation is also being recorded, and the recording will be available on the Cyber Hawaii website in a few days. In addition, the presenters have agreed that you can contact them after today's presentation should you have any questions or need their assistance. Their email addresses will appear during the presentation. During this presentation, you're requested to remain on mute unless asking questions during designated Q&A sections. Your presenters today are Jenalyn Labrunda and Charissa Wong. Jenalyn is a cybersecurity advisor with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. She's responsible for Hawaii, Guam, the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas Islands, and American Samoa. She's based in Guam and is an experienced cybersecurity and information technology professional with over 15 years of experience. She's a certified information systems security professional and a graduate from the University of Guam with a double major in technology and e-commerce and computer information systems. Charissa has over 20 years of experience in information technology and security management. She currently serves as the Information Security and Technology Manager for Bowers and Kubota. Charissa holds a CISSP certification and is the owner of CyberTI, a security consulting firm whose mission is to help Hawaii businesses improve their security posture. Charissa is an active member in the local cybersecurity community, which includes serving as the Vice President of ISC Squared Hawaii. She's also a member of the CIO Council and Cyber Hawaii. Charissa is a proud graduate of Kamehameha Schools and the University of Oregon. And with that introduction, I'll turn it over to Jenalyn to start us off. Oops.
All right. Thank you so much, Al.
Okay, I'm going to try and stop sharing here.
All right. One second while I try to pull up my slides. All right. Do you see my slides just fine?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Aloha. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for being here today. So today's webinar will be focused on password and multi-factor authentication as part of our partnership with Cyber Hawaii for the webinar series. As Al mentioned, I am the cybersecurity advisor for Region 9, and that includes the 3 territories in the Pacific, which is Guam, CNMI, and American Samoa, and the states of Hawaii, California, Nevada, and Arizona. Our Region 9 headquarters is located in Oakland, California. I am physically located in Guam, so I'm a day ahead of you. Our mission is to lead the national effort to understand, manage, and reduce risk to our nation's cyber and physical infrastructure. Our primary goal is to ensure that the critical infrastructure that we depend on daily to such as water, power, healthcare, and telecommunications are secure and resilient so that we can continue to live our lives comfortably with minimal interruptions. So we serve 16 critical infrastructure sectors, and that includes commercial facilities, food and agriculture, information technology, just to name a few. Some of the key activities that we do is understanding the types of cybersecurity incidents and vulnerabilities that is out there, so we can in turn share this information to our critical infrastructure partners in the form of a cybersecurity advisory, so you know what to watch out for and what you need to do to mitigate the risks to your organization. So let's talk about password management. So why is password management and multi-factor authentication important? It is because of breaches such as the one recently coined as the mother of all breaches, also known as MOAB. This revealed over 26 billion records. That's a lot of records. And although some of these are duplicates, a significant portion of the data is sourced from past data breaches and leaks. And the vast amount of sensitive information contained in the database is a major cause for concern, as it could be exploited by malicious actors for a variety of cybercriminal activities. The leaked data also include usernames and passwords. And as you can see here, this is just the top 10 companies and the amounts of records leaked. So what can you do to protect yourself now? Some of the things that you could do is to change your passwords and enable multi-factor authentication for those accounts, which is the main topic for our webinar today. So let's start with why. So if the MOAB should be enough reason for you to change your passwords, because they are susceptible to password-based attacks. And some of these attacks include brute force attacks, which is essentially using a software to test a combination of usernames and passwords until they find one that works. And some of the subcategories for a brute force attack includes dictionary attacks, which runs through commonly used passwords or phrases, used words and phrases, and a combination of popular words and numbers. Another type of brute force attack is called password spraying, which is using the same password across many accounts. The cyber theft that was conducted by the Mabna Institute used password spraying technique, and they targeted over 100,000 accounts of professors around the world, which includes professors' email accounts across 144 US-based universities and 176 universities located in foreign countries. The Mabna Institute first collected lists of names and email accounts associated with the intended victim company through open source internet searches. Then they attempted to gain access to those accounts with commonly used passwords, such as frequently used default passwords, in order to attempt to obtain unauthorized access to as many accounts as possible. Another type of password-based attack is phishing and social engineering. Remember your Nigerian prince? A lot of the phishing attempts nowadays are more sophisticated than that. So phishing and social engineering is where attackers deceive people into revealing sensitive information, such as usernames and passwords. A victim of a social engineering attack recently was the MGM Casino in Las Vegas, which was conducted by a hacker group called Scattered Spider. The group used fraudulent phone calls to employees and help desks to phish for login credentials. And lastly, not changing the default passwords for your equipment just makes it easy for threat actors. Unitronics is an Israeli company whose Vision Series programmable logic controllers were exploited by cyber actors called the Cyber Avengers. They basically scanned the internet for these Unitronics devices and used the default password of 1111, right, to deface the controller's user interface, which may render the PLC inoperative. So here's the top 20 most commonly used passwords in the United States. If the password you are using now is listed here, I highly recommend you change them immediately. This list was obtained from a 43 terabyte database, which was extracted from various public sources, including the dark web. And all of these passwords can be cracked within 1 second. So some of the ways to protect yourself from password-based cyber attacks is to use strong passwords. And that means long, unique, and complex passwords. Long passwords are definitely better than short, complicated password, because as an example, an 8-character password will take anywhere from a few minutes to a couple hours to crack, while a 13-character password could take over 350,000 years, and a 16-character password will take a hacker 1 billion years to crack. So an example that you could use is listed here. It's a common phrase, life is too short to waste. This long, 24 characters, complicated with, special characters and numbers and underscore, right? So another way you could use for your password is a short verse from the Bible, for example, a favorite line from a poem, or even a favorite quote with an underscore or dash between each word. So with a complicated password, you will probably have a hard time remembering all of them, right? So this is when a password manager becomes crucial. So an enterprise password manager can be a good step to increase security for a smaller company. A password manager creates, stores, and fills in passwords automatically, so you only have to remember one strong password, and that's for the password manager itself. Encryption ensures that password manager never know what your passwords are, and keeping them safe from cyber attacks. Providing a company password manager will make it easier for your employees to use strong passwords and protect themselves, your business, and your customers. The last thing you want to see in your employees' desks are sticky notes with their passwords written all over it, right? So use a password manager. So when you're choosing a password manager, here are some features that we recommend for you. One is to ensure that the password manager has end-to-end encryption. Your vault data needs to remain encrypted when sent to the password manager cloud and remains encrypted until the unique email address and master password are entered. In this case, the password manager company cannot see your passwords and cannot access your master password. This also means that you need to protect your master password by not keeping it on an unencrypted device or platform. A good practice is to write it down and store it in a safe at home or even a bank safety deposit box. Also consider the ease of use and the ability for it to fill in passwords automatically. Also consider if you're able to use it on your phone, your computer, whether you're using a Mac or Windows, and if it supports browser extensions. Does it have the ability to do encrypted export of your data? And does it have additional features that may be important to you, such as travel mode, an authenticator app, and breach monitoring? So travel mode lets you delete any sensitive data from your device before you travel and then restores it with a click after you've crossed the border. This prevents anyone from accessing your complete password vault. And then some password managers have breach monitoring, which basically searches the web for leaked or stolen personal data and then alerts you if your information has been compromised. The last thing to consider is cost. Whether for personal or corporate use, there are numerous password managers to choose from. Some are free, some allows additional features for a nominal fee, and while others require a subscription from the get-go in order for you to use it. So another way to protect yourself and your organization is to utilize multi-factor authentication. So what is multi-factor authentication, or MFA, also known as two-factor authentication? Earlier, we talked about the different password attacks, and while having a complicated long password certainly helps, enabling MFA will make it even more difficult for threat actors to gain access to your information and organization's infrastructure. MFA adds an additional layer of security for authentication, and it requires 2 or more verification factors. So that's something you know, like a password or a PIN, something you have, an authenticator app, a hardware token, or a smart card, and something you are, which is biometrics, like fingerprint or facial recognition. So where should you turn on multi-factor authentication? So you should turn it on to on systems that are important to you or where you have data that's important to you, such as your email accounts, accounts with financial information like online store and bank accounts, and accounts with personal information such as social media accounts. So there are 3 types of multi-factor authentication. There's the SMS or voice MFA, app-based MFA, and phishing-resistant MFA. Just to note, some MFAs are definitely better than others. And so, for example, the SMS or voice MFA is when you receive an authentication code via SMS, text message, or phone call. And then an app-based MFA is when you receive push notification to confirm login or a code that is generated via an authenticator app. And lastly, phishing-resistant MFA, which is the standard that everyone should strive for. But if phishing-resistant MFA is not doable, or any other form of MFA is really better than no MFA. However, you should still strive to implement stronger MFA to avoid being hacked. And there are two types of phishing-resistant MFA, and that's the public key infrastructure-based, or PKI, and FIDO, or Fast Identity Online. And in the next few slides, I will go over the pros and cons for each type of MFA. Okay, so SMS or voice MFA. As I mentioned earlier, not all MFAs are created equal. So SMS or voice MFA is probably the least preferred out of all three types of MFA because they are susceptible to attacks and can be intercepted. They're also not encrypted. In some instances, threat actors will conduct a push notification attack, also called push fatigue attacks, and MFA prompt bombing, where they flood you with notifications to authenticate until you click accept. In this case, the attacker is usually already in possession of a valid username and password. We've all been there before, right? We're busy, we're immersed in whatever it is that we're doing, and then we receive a notification on our phone and it keeps coming up, approve, sign in, and then out of habit, we tap approve. So SMS or voice MFA is susceptible to SIM swap attack, which is a type of account takeover fraud where scammers take control of their victims' phone numbers by tricking phone service providers into swapping a target's phone number to an attacker-controlled SIM card. This allows the criminals to receive the victim's calls and messages, making it easy to bypass SMS-based MFA, steal credentials, and take control of victims' online service accounts. So last week, the SEC, the State Securities and Exchange Commission, was actually a victim of a SIM swap attack, which led to the dissemination of false information about the approval of spot Bitcoin exchange traded funds, or ETFs. In an official statement, the SEC revealed that an unauthorized party gained control of the cell phone number associated with the X or Twitter account and subsequently resetted the password for the @SECGov Twitter account. So the next type of MFA is the app-based MFA. The pros of using an app-based MFA is that it's easy to implement and it's free or inexpensive. Some of the cons is that you must have a mobile device and the app installed. Some types of MFA includes a mobile authenticator app or a mobile app notification. So a mobile authenticator app generates a OTP, or a one-time password, every 30 to 60 seconds and is valid for 90 to 180 seconds. The disadvantage of using this is that you need to put that OTP within the time frame, or it will reject the code and you need to get another one. So, once you open the app or once you start your login, you need to pay attention because you only have a certain amount of seconds to input that code. So usually how this works is that after the user enters their username and password, a prompt appears for the passcode. After generating the passcode using the mobile authenticator app, the user enters that code as a second verification method. The other one I mentioned is the mobile app notification. And this is when a push notification to the app that contains an approval request to allow or deny a login attempt. The disadvantage of using this is that you must have internet or mobile phone reception in order to receive that push notification. So how this works is after the user enters their username and password, a login request is sent to their phone, and then the user taps allow to authenticate. The other con for using an app-based MFA is that it is susceptible to cyber attacks, such as the MFA fatigue attack, which was recently conducted on Uber. The attacker in this case already has the user's password and combined it with social engineering to increase their chances of success. They contacted the victim on WhatsApp, claiming to be a member of the IT team, and instructed them to approve the login to get the MFA notifications to stop. The threat actor was able to access Uber's internal network and scan the company's intranet for sensitive information, including getting a hold of admin credentials. So lastly, the third type of MFA is the phishing-resistant MFA. And there are two types, which is the PKI, or Public Key Infrastructure, and FIDO, Fast Identity Online. PKI-based MFA comes in a variety of forms, and a well-known form of PKI-based MFA is the smart card that government agencies use to authenticate users to their computers. PKI-based MFA provides strong security and is sensible for large and complex organizations. However, successfully deploying PKI-based MFA requires highly mature identity management practices. It's also not as widely supported by commonly used services and infrastructure, especially in the absence of single sign-on technologies. In most PKI-based MFA deployments, a user's credentials are contained in a security chip on a smart card, and the card must be directly connected to a device for the user to log into the system with the correct password or PIN. The US government's Personal Identity Verification Card and Common Access Card are examples of PKI-based MFA. Now, FIDO is a widely available phishing-resistant authentication. We at CISA urges all organizations to start planning a move to FIDO because when a malicious cyber actor tricks a user into logging into a fake website, the FIDO protocol will block the attempt. FIDO is a set of open source industry standards that enforce strong passwordless authentication for digital accounts. These standards were developed by the FIDO Alliance, a consortium of technology leaders including Google, Microsoft, Apple, and many others. This alliance aim was to create a set of standards compatible with all devices and technologies that reduce our reliance on passwords while improving account security. This has led to faster, more secure login processes becoming more common. Passwords can be replaced by secure, FIDO-enabled hardware keys, such as separate physical tokens, also called roaming authenticators, connected to a device via USB or near-field communications, or biometric checks embedded into laptops or mobile devices, such as Touch ID and Face ID. Some features to consider when choosing a FIDO-based authentication is the durability, the ease of use, the form factor that would be compatible with your devices, if it supports single sign-on, and provides a broad range of authentication options. One way to know if the product that you chose is FIDO certified is that they would have the FIDO logo. So when you're implementing MFA for your organization, consider the following questions. What resources do you want to protect from compromise? For example, cyber threat actors often target email systems, file servers, and remote access systems to gain access to an organization's data. They also try to compromise identity servers like Active Directory, which would allow them to create new accounts or take control of user accounts. Which of your users are high-value targets? While the compromise of any user account can create a serious security incident, every organization has a small number of user accounts that have additional access or privileges, which are especially valuable to cyber threat actors. For example, if a cyber threat actor can compromise the account of a system or network administrator, they may be able to access any system and any data in the organization. Other examples of high-value targets are HR staff, who may have access to personnel records. Also, keep in mind some of the challenges you may encounter when implementing MFA. Some systems may not support phishing-resistant MFA. The product may no longer be supported by the vendor, or the vendor has not yet prioritized the work to implement phishing-resistant MFA. Regardless, we at CISA encourages organizations to first focus on services that do support phishing-resistant MFA. As an example, most hosted mail and single sign-on systems support FIDO. These systems are good starting points because the data is valuable and the vendors likely support FIDO. Another challenge may be the difficulty to deploy phishing-resistant MFA to all staff members at once. So for example, it may be impractical to train, enroll, and support all users at the same time, or there may be other operational considerations that prevent the organization from rolling out phishing-resistant MFA to some groups in the first phase. Consider which groups might be appropriate for an initial phase. For example, your help desk and IT system and network administrators are good candidates for that first phase. Then the later phases can expand from there, incorporating lessons learned from earlier phases. Lastly, there may be concerns that users will resist a migration to phishing-resistant MFA. IT security leadership should present the risk associated with not having an MFA, or with deploying or maintaining potentially vulnerable MFA to the organization's top leadership for approval. If the organization's senior leadership decide that the risk of not using phishing-resistant MFA is too great, they are best positioned to manage cultural and communication challenges to implementation. So to summarize, when creating passwords, make sure they are long, unique, and complicated. Use the password manager to manage your passwords. And if there's an option to enable MFA, make sure you do so. Like I said, any MFA is better than no MFA. If you have any questions, you can also go to our website for more information regarding multi-factor authentication and additional resources to help with keeping your organization secure and resilient. My email address and phone number is listed here as well, so feel free to contact me if you have any other questions or concerns. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Jenilyn. Why don't we open it up for questions here before Teresa chimes in? Nathan, do we have any questions in the chat window?
Yeah, we do have one from Sonia, and she says it's for the end, during the Q&A period. But her question relates to any advice for professional tips for convincing financial institutions and other organizations to adopt USB keys or cards. Some have serious location sensitivity situations, and mobile apps represent security safety risks, such as participants in addressing confidentiality or other protective programs.
Yeah, so with MFA, right? I mean, I understand some places don't want to use like mobile app authentication, but as I presented, there are multiple types of MFA. So they can also use, we highly like here at CISA, we highly recommend the phishing resistant MFA. And what you could do to convince your leadership to utilize MFA is to present the risks of not using one. One way to do that is to present some of the breaches that's happened that involves you just using passwords. Even complicated passwords, if you are targeted, is susceptible to a password-based cyber attack. So I think that it's important to have your leadership support multi-factor authentication if they value the data that the company has in storage. And the other thing too, and I mentioned it in my presentation earlier as well, you don't have to roll out MFA to everybody at the same time. It may be a good proof of concept to roll it out to like the users that have privileges, so like system or network administrators at first, and then roll it. And then if that deployment is successful, you could show the success to your leadership, and then you could roll it out to the rest of the users. So that's just one way that you can do that.
And we have a follow-up question from Kat. I think many of the small businesses are watching or tuned into the webinar. She's asking about USB keys. Is it practical for very small offices? If there are fewer than 5 people on staff, is it still practical to do that?
Yeah, the advantage of using like the tokens, right? Like USB keys is they're inexpensive and they're very easy to deploy. So as I said, any MFA is better than no MFA. So if that's what your organization can afford and in terms of cost and resources, then certainly use whatever that is that works for your organization.
Very good. Nathan, were there any other questions, or are we good to move on?
Yeah, no questions, but Sonia just wanted to clarify that, she was asking not for her organization, but just trying to look at ways to work with the financial institutions better.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just saw the question in the chat, and I know that phones sometimes, especially in financial organizations, they don't allow phones in certain areas and things like that. So I think, you know, if you want to use keys like USB keys or smart cards as a type of multi-factor authentication, that is certainly one way to do it. And again, as I mentioned, you know, you may have to do a phase rollout where you roll it out to like your system and network administrators first, because they're the ones that have, you know, the access to the kingdom, right? And so they're the ones that you want to make sure multi-factor authentication is enabled. And, you know, as that works out for your organization, you can present the use case, and then hopefully your leadership would be more acceptable to that.
So, yeah, and
Okay.
yeah, I see there's one other question that came in just now related to implementation if you don't have a dedicated IT team. I'm going to suggest we hold that until after Charissa's presentation, because Charissa's going to talk a little bit about implementation. We'll see if she can partly answer the question, and if not, we can address it at the end as well. So, and a reminder, part of the concept with these webinars is that if you have questions after the session, that you can follow up directly with the presenters. So if there are topics that need additional discussion, you'll still be able to do that after we're done here today. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Charissa to talk to us about her experiences with multi-factor authentication and password management. Charissa, I think you're on. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Sorry, it minimized it. All right, everybody can see my screen okay?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charissa, and I'll be presenting from a business perspective on how we handled issues with password management and MFA, along with our processes in implementing it. So the first issue we're going to start with is password management. So before we put a plan in place, the issues that we came across was just poor password hygiene. You know, the passwords were too easy. They weren't using a long enough minimum length. They were being reused. And it led to some security incidences where money was lost to fraud. And it then took us on to looking into cybersecurity insurance. And one of the requirements back in the day, and it was back then, it was like 1 page long of or 1 page of an application. Now it's like 7 pages. But one of the first things they ask you is about password management and if there's policy and enforcement. So we knew we had to address it. And once we identified this, we needed a way to enforce it. And there was concerns along with that, because you're going to be asking people to change the way they do things. And of course, it's always difficult. So we put a plan in place, and that plan, whenever you're building any type of security program, you always want to start with policy. And we started off with creating a policy, and all employees must acknowledge and accept these policies. And in conjunction with that, we did some mandatory training on why this is important and an urgent concern for the company, along with tips on how to create new passwords. And then as an added bonus, we also offered our employees, we offered it as an employee benefit, where we offered everyone a free password manager license. And not only do they get the free password manager license for your business, but it also came with a free password license for a personal account with 5 additional licenses so they can share it with their family and friends. And so once we addressed, and you know, you're gonna have to train on how to use password manager. But once we addressed 1 through 3, we were then able to turn on the complexity requirements and do a lot of technical controls to make sure it was enforced. For instance, using group policy. I'm going to add a section regarding here about password managers. I get a lot of questions about which password manager should we use, and Jen was covering some of the benefits of using a password manager. I use a password manager. I only know one password. All my other passwords, I have no idea what it is. And it's worked for me for a long time. And so whenever you're selecting a password manager, especially for a business, we took a look at the features. So one of the things that it should require is the ability to make sure that MFA is required when logging in. So sometimes some of these password managers, it's up to the user to turn on MFA, and that's not what we wanted. We wanted to be able to centrally control the configuration of that. And so that was a very important feature. And then along with something that Jen also brought up was like breach monitoring. It was also a feature. It wasn't a need, but it was a nice to see and nice to have, which that then encourages the users to update and improve their passwords. The next one was ease of use, and we have a lot of non-technical comfortable people, and so we needed something that was easy to train on, easy for them to use, and to just get them started. And then the third was compatibility. We needed to make sure that whatever we picked was compatible with all of our devices, you know, whether that's laptops or desktops, operating systems, or mobile devices. And then, of course, the fourth one, even though this is listed last, it's actually number one in my book because I do a lot of research on these services. And you really need to research a lot of, you know, do a search about when was the last time they've had a security incident or a breach, and look into it to see what exactly happened. Sometimes you can find that maybe it was due to their negligence, or maybe they were just part of the equation, like that example regarding Uber. So one other thing I do is I reach out to the services once I identified maybe a few that I want to do business with. I reach out to them and I ask them for copies of their attestations, which is like SOC 2 reports, ISO, pen testing. Of course, you're going to need to sign an NDA on it. But if they're not willing to share these things with you, that means they're usually hiding something. So a lot of these companies who work in security space, they put a lot of time, effort, and money into protecting their service. And a lot of them like to show off. So I recommend that you really do your research and you look at what their practices are. So my next is regarding MFA. How did we decide to implement MFA into our company? Well, prior to us having one solution, there was a lot of, it was all over the place. And we really wanted to bring it in and be able to manage it more. So the requirements for our MFA solution was we wanted to improve security, which meant MFA can do a bunch of things, not just MFA into your email or anything like that. But, you know, you also need it for VPN. You also need it for maybe device security, all types of different options for MFA to be used with. And we wanted it to be used through a variety of ways. So one of our requirement was to meet all of those variety of ways. And number two was to be able to manage the MFA solution with one centrally managed portal. So like, for instance, if you use Google or Microsoft Authenticator, which is free, there's no way for us as a company to centrally manage that. So it was very important for us, especially because if an employee lost their phone or was terminated, we needed to be able to immediately remove access. And number three was we're starting to, you know, in order to get the insurance, cybersecurity insurance, we needed to meet the MFA requirement. And then we started also getting doing things that required compliance. And that's one of the top things for compliance and regulations. You need to have MFA in place. And then, of course, again, for our non-technical users, we needed something that was easy for them to use. All right. For our selection process, what we looked for was, again, integration and compatibility, making sure that it worked with our devices. And number two was ease of use and accessibility. And, you know, we have some employees that travel outside of the US. So we had to make sure that if they were traveling out of the US, they would still be able to get access. And we needed the MFA to work when outside of the US. And that also created another policy that if an employee will be traveling while doing work, they would need to tell us their travel plans so we could set up additional monitoring. And yeah, so, and then the third, of course, is cost. For us, we knew that, especially if you want one centrally managed solution, there would be a cost to it. And so we budgeted for this. And then, of course, again, reputation and support. Do your research. Look up their last breach or last security incident where they could have been involved, or if it was something due to their negligence. Another big thing I would recommend is asking a group of your peers that are in other companies and seeing how their experience was with implementing it, or how was working with that services support. So that's really important that you get support once you purchase this service. You're going to need the support, especially when you're implementing the solution. And my last thing I wanted to was, I know, you know, back in the day, everybody was like, oh, I want a free solution. We want to save money. But whenever you're talking about security space and the security program or security solutions, I really, really encourage companies to pay for that little bit of, you know, service and, you know, budget for it. And, you know, that money will be used to retain their employees and to update, improve, and maintain their service. And I was watching a presentation once, and this kind of stuck with me, and I wanted to share it with you. This guy said, if you're not paying for a product, you are the product. And so on that note, that concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions or comments, please let me know.
Thanks, Teresa. Let's see, Nathan, did we get anything coming in on the chat in terms of questions?
No, just that one from Kat about the dedicated IT was the last one that we received.
Okay. So I guess that question could be, you know, maybe addressed either by Jen or by Teresa. I think clearly organizations without a dedicated IT staff will have hopefully folks who have some knowledge at least about security and about the assets that are trying to be protected. But any thoughts from you folks about what people could think about in terms of, you know, how do you manage risk when against cyber threats when you say don't have someone whose job it is to do that full time? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that, Al. So CISA actually has a lot of cybersecurity services that is offered, not just to our public partners, but as well as private partners. So as an example, we offer the cyber hygiene vulnerability scanning service, and this is essentially scanning your public-facing IPs for any vulnerabilities that's out there. And this is a free service that any organization can sign up for. And what it does is once you've signed up, you provide your IP addresses, the public-facing IP addresses, and then the team will start scanning them on a weekly basis. And then you will get a report indicating the type of vulnerabilities that that your public-facing IPs have, right? And then you can do what you will with that report, but of course, we recommend that whatever vulnerabilities that is shown in that report, that you close them out. So it's very easy to sign up. You just send an email, and if you have to change the IPs, because sometimes in some cases, some companies do change their IPs, you just send an email back saying, these are the new IPs, or add these new IPs, delete the IPs I provided you, things like that. But it's for those people who don't have the team to do that scanning. CISA can do that for you. So it's free. So yeah, do sign up for that. And Bill, thank you for posting that. He actually posted the link to our website in regards to that service.
Mhm. We have a question from Joseph. He's asking about, for residential associations, what they can do if they don't have a dedicated IT team. I think you kind of touched on that. And Bill sent more links. And then Larry says, are there any computer brands to avoid? Some were discovered in the past to have been chips with embedded vulnerability capabilities.
That's kind of difficult because everything has a vulnerability. I would stick with the well-known ones, honestly, because at least if you stick with a big name brand, they're going to be sending out notifications when a vulnerability is found.
Yeah.
And then Jesse has a question for Sharissa and Jen. For Sharissa, it's, have you encountered any unexpected issues with MFA rollout?
I wouldn't say unexpected, but I would say probably the most difficult part was changing the way that people do things. We ran into issues where people are like, I don't want to do that. And at that point, that's when you fall back on your policies and mainly your governance. You have to have, the upper management or ownership, they have to buy into this. If you don't have their backing, it's really hard to roll any of these things out, because then you're going to have one person be like, well, they can't do it, so we need to give them an exception. You cannot give people exceptions.
And then a question for Jen relating to public schools. Does CISA have any training or outreach to public schools?
We do actually. In fact, if you go to our CISA website, there is a section just dedicated for K-12 schools, and we have a K-12 security toolkit, and that toolkit actually has some of the practices that K-12 schools can take a look at to start improving their cybersecurity posture. And thank you again, Bill, for posting that link. So there's a link there in the chat. I just want to add one more thing. And in addition to our toolkit, we also do training. So we have a team who does training specifically. We have, active shooter webinars and bombing prevention webinars, as well as specific training for schools and whatnot. So if you go to our website, there's a whole lot of resources there. But if there's something in particular you're looking for, send me a message, and then we'll look into how we can support you.
Very good. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Nathan.
I was going to say, I don't see any other additional questions coming in.
Okay. Well, the questions are great. I think they kind of get to the heart of what we're hoping to achieve with these webinars, which is really to allow you folks to ask practical questions about how you get things done above and beyond.
Jesse, have hackers been able to sell a fake MFA product or even resell a hacked MFA system?
I am currently not aware of someone selling a fake MFA product. However, as I mentioned, certain MFAs are susceptible to attacks too, right? So that's why we highly recommend phishing resistant MFA. So if when choosing a MFA product, the name brands, you're usually safe with those. But when choosing a phishing resistant MFA, the ones that support FIDO will actually have that FIDO logo. So you are sure that they use that technology. Products that are FIDO certified actually have to go through a certification process. So it's a very thorough process. So if they have that logo, you're sure that it is secure.
And I think that touches on a very strong point because, we typically talk about the technology and what the software can do. But in many cases, when threat actors look to circumvent things like MFA, they use social engineering techniques, which really are about people talking to other people, convincing them that, oh, hey, I changed my phone, so I have a different phone number that you use for MFA. Or, I have my account, but I forgot this piece of the information. And I think that's where, as Jen was saying, things like the FIDO technology is geared to prevent that kind of social engineering, to prevent that kind of phishing from going on. So again, MFA as a technology is something that it's definitely better to have it than not have it. But just be aware that there are differences in the technology, and human engineering can actually factor into how vulnerable your business might be against these kind of threats. Nathan, was there another question that came in, or
A tip from Sonia to everyone.
Oh.
Take a look at that in the chat.
Okay. So I guess I'll just open it up. We're getting close to the top of the hour. Are there any other questions that folks have? And if you do have something, feel free to unmute at this point and just ask the question. Okay, I'm hearing a lot of silence, so let me just go ahead and, oh, sorry, did I hear?
No.
Let's see. Gentlemen, okay. Sorry, I'm going to try and share one more slide. I'm having a little technical problem here.
Al, can we find a way to share all the links that Bill has been posting in the chat?
Yeah. Yes. We'll make sure that we post that with the rest of the material. So I was going to mention that let's see. Present. Not sure what you're seeing. I'm trying to share my last slide, but
Yeah, we see the next steps.
you
The
do?
contact.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Planning.
So I will mention that in addition to the recording of the today's webinar, we will be sharing the presentations that were shown today. It'll take us a couple days to post things on our website. And what we'll do is send you folks an email that lets you know when the content is up there. And then you'll be able to get the presentations. There are active links in the presentations that you can click on. And then we'll also take the references that are posted into the chat and also post it up there with the material, probably like a Word file, so you can download that as well. But at this point, I think we're ready to conclude our webinar for today. I did want to share one last time the contact information for Jen Lynn and Charissa if you want to reach out after this. And I do encourage you to keep the conversation going because really, especially for smaller organizations, these kind of issues may not come up today or tomorrow, but they may come up in a week, the week after that, next month. So it's good to have contact information that you can fall back on. And then I did want to mention that our next webinar is slated for March 6th. And we'll be talking about security leadership and trying to talk about, what that means for different size organizations. A lot of times, you hear talk about CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, being kind of the central point for security. But as we evolve into newer threats, newer technology, everyone in a sense has to take on some of that responsibility in order to be effective. And that's where even small organizations need to figure out how do you implement good leadership skills from a security standpoint into your organization. So with that, I'm going to conclude the webinar. I want to thank you folks for attending. Hopefully you got something out of this. And then when we send you the email with the link to the content and the recording, we'll also send you a link to a survey. And we'd like you to fill that out if possible. We're always looking to improve what we present and the series. And, you know, your feedback is very critical to us. So thank you very much. Mahalo for attending, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you.